Hello there, Mavericks. This is Rob Reinhold, and this is the Currency Recap. It is November 15th. Cannot believe that November is halfway over, and definitely cannot believe that 2022 is almost over. I've been trading for over 25 years now, and the years just seem to keep going by faster and faster. So let's jump into today what we saw, and we had a few things happen overnight. The first thing that we had happen overnight was that we had China lifted some of their COVID restrictions. And this gave a real nice boost. So the Hang Seng was up about 4.5%, and it gave a really nice risk-on mood to the whole markets. So we saw risk assets start to move higher. We saw the Kiwi and Aussie that really have been quiet lately. They started to move higher. And then we got the US PPI report. And this was a much better than expected report. And this really confirms what we saw last week on the CPI, that inflation is coming down in America. Is that enough to get the Fed to stop raising interest rates? I guess we'll find out at their next meeting, but that's what the market is betting on right now. The market was looking really good until somewhere around 12 o'clock Eastern time, news came out that some Russian missiles had actually landed in Poland. Now, this is a really big deal because of the treaty that all the NATO countries have, is that if you attacked one country, you attack all countries. And basically, if Poland decided that they want to retaliate, the rest of NATO would have to do that, which is a huge escalation in the war. Now look, I'm not going to rush into this. It's very early. It looks like this was not a deliberate act. It looks like this was either a mistake or maybe some air defense systems hit a Russian missile, knocked it off course. At this point, it's way too early, but the equity markets sold off a bit. And they did recover at the end of the day, as people were thinking, okay, maybe this isn't this huge deal. Maybe this is just an honest mistake. Overall, we did have a less than stellar close. We were well off of our highs. So by the end of the day, we actually had a positive return, but it was well off of our highs. S&P up about 0.8%. At one point, the S&P was up 1.8%. The VT actually had a much better close than the rest of the United States markets. Crypto basically flat, gold flat, oil up a little bit. So basically the story was things looked better earlier on in the day in the US session and then really faded. And here, if we take a look at the S&P, you can see this candle. This candle is one of these candles that while it was an up day, it wasn't a great day. So we now have two red candles right up at this resistance level where we're now having to start to think about, okay, well, maybe this market is a little topped out. With that being said, the fact that we've had two red days, but we haven't fallen, is giving me an idea that, okay, well, the bulls are still in control. It's just a little bit messy at the moment. I think at this point, I think it's a tough call to say whether the markets are going to move up or down the next day or two. But I think what you can say is we are at least up against a point where we might have to take a break a little bit or even sell off a bit. I am overall about neutral on the markets. But when I come over here to the VT, we have the same thing. We have two red candles, but look at this. This is way stronger, much, much stronger. We still could be hitting up against some resistance levels. Maybe we need to spend a day or two just churning around. But ultimately, I think that the equity markets are showing that they're tired, but they're not really selling off hard. And if we take a look at crypto, all we can see here is that it's basically sideways. After the big fall from the FTX debacle, you can see we had this initial bounce back day, and then after that, it's been basically sideways. I expect that crypto is going to consolidate for at least another couple of weeks before there's another major move. I just think a lot of people are really worried about this. The people who wanted to sell, they sold. Everyone else is just a little bit wary. I think we churn here and really go nowhere in crypto. When we take a look at the overall market, we have to give it a +2. It's above the 20 moving average. It's above the 50. The 20 is crossed up above the 50. It's a moderately bullish marketplace right here, right now. So that means that we want to be looking for risk-on assets and play them against risk-off assets. If we take a look at the calendar, what to expect here. We have wage prices tonight from Australia. Okay, now that's going to be a decent report. I think it's going to move the Aussie 10 to 20 pips. That's about it. I think the more important reports are the CPI reports we get out of the UK and of Canada. That's going to be coming up in the next 24 hours. I think if you're trading the CAD or the pound, you need to be looking at these. After that, I really don't see any news of importance until Wednesday night, the Aussie employment report. I think that is going to be the next important one on the schedule. So let's jump in and take a look at the currencies one by one. This is where we stood as of 3 p.m. yesterday. Basically, we had everything in the middle. Now, we had talked over the weekend about playing where there's movement. And we talked about the dollar, the yen, and the Swiss franc. And I was very clear, said, hey, this is where I'm going to be playing at the first part of this week. And there were some great moves in dollar yen and dollar Swiss franc. There were some great moves. That being said, that has mellowed out a little bit. And I said over the weekend, I said, I'm waiting for later in the week for the Kiwi to come into play. And the Kiwi actually did come into play today. So I think we can kind of shift where we're looking here. We take a look first at cryptos, and I'm going to just say, just forget about the cryptos. They're just going nowhere here. We've been waiting for the risk-on assets to start to perform. Last week, we had a big jump higher in equities, and the Aussie and Kiwi did not perform. And I said, until they start to perform, they're on the shelf. Well, guess what? They're starting to perform, and that China news was a big deal for Australia and New Zealand. Let's jump into the charts and see where these have changed over the last 24 hours. I'm going to go quickly through these cryptos because they all kind of look the same. Again, big drops, and we've just been going flat or sideways. So as you can see here, this has been going nowhere for about a week. If we go over here to Bitcoin Cash, we have about the same thing. Had the big fall, a little bounce back, and going sideways. Ethereum, sideways. Litecoin, sideways. Okay, so we've now gone through the cryptos on a 4-hour chart and said, okay, they're all going nowhere. Now we don't need to spend any more time on them. Let's jump into the dollar. Now, the dollar has been a very good mover here. If we take a look at the 4-hour chart, I still like the dollar on the short side. I still think the dollar looks like it's going lower. Let me jump over here to a daily chart. You can see here that we are up against some support here. I do expect there to be some support, and we're seeing that. We are seeing this support hold for really the last 2 to 3 days. We did break down a little bit. We're bouncing back up. I like the dollar short here. I think it's a good play. It looks good on a chart. It's telling me all the momentum's to the downside. But right here, right now, not quite. We just got a pierce of the parabolic SAR on the bullish side. The RSI has started to come up and flatten out. It's just telling me that right here, right now, it's not time to go short dollar now. Down the road, we definitely could be looking at that. I think over the next 6 to 12 hours, dollar is a pair that you could definitely take a look at being short. We come over here to the yen. The yen strengthened last week. And then you can see we pull back a little bit. We've just been going nowhere. We're in a very tight range here on yen. And so I'm looking at yen saying I'm not interested in yen at all at the moment. If it can show me that it wants to move somewhere, I'll take a look at it. But it hasn't moved anywhere in about 30 or 40 hours. It's on the shelf. Swiss franc, on the other hand, has definitely moved. We've moved up from levels. We had a run last week. We pulled back. This is a pretty decent looking little pullback here. It's a little early to say, okay, it's time to be long Swiss franc. And frankly, at the moment, we've got a little bit more downside momentum. EMA is actually going down a little bit. RSI has come back down to 50. We've got a parabolic SAR that's showing us, okay, momentum is on the short side. I'm looking at Swiss franc for a bounce around these levels. I think it's very premature to call this a bounce. However, give me another couple candles, another 4, 8 hours, maybe 12 hours, and maybe I'll get a better signal. But for right now, for me, Swiss franc is actually a little bit of a -1 here. But I am actively watching for Swiss franc to strengthen up a little bit, maybe during the European session or the US session. Coming over here to the euro, we're going to look at the euro and just say, okay, well, that's going nowhere. It's flat. When things are flat, just quickly scratch them off your list. You can come back and check on this in 4, 8, 16 hours, whatever it is. But for right now, there's really not a lot going on. It's just trading between this channel. I'm going to go ahead and look at other things. Let's see if the pound is moving. And you can see it's not doing anything either. It is just in this really tight range. Moving averages have flattened out. RSI has flattened out. It's not telling us anything here. Maybe if anything, it's a little bit to the upside or maybe a little flat. Look, once you can identify it's not going anywhere, you don't need to go any further. Let's go into CAD. CAD has definitely been on the weak side. One of the pairs I do want to take a look at is dollar CAD. We talked about this last week, that the dollar CAD have been highly correlated. Until the CAD separates from the dollar, it's really not a great trade here whatsoever. So we're going to just skip on to Aussie, and you're going to see that the Aussie looks great. This chart looks really good, and I want to just show you how much consolidation we've just broken out of. I mean, look at this consolidation that we've been in. This is like a month of time, and we're now moving out of that consolidation. EMA is moving higher, RSI is moving higher, everything is looking like it's moving higher. Temporarily, okay, we just hit a high, and we're coming down off of that high. All right, that's fine. We just want to be patient, let this thing pull back, and let's buy this dip. Let's buy this pullback because it is showing us it is clearly broken out of its channel. If we come over here to the Kiwi, we're going to see the same thing. We're going to see that the Kiwi has consolidated from November 3rd all the way to November 15th. That's 2 weeks of consolidation. These breakouts after 2 weeks of consolidation, these can be bought. So the only question is the timing. Where is the timing? Right now, we're having a little pullback. This is going to be a level right here where it's at that could definitely be a good little support area. If we get a green candle or two off of this, I think you can take a look at being long Kiwi. The question is, what are you going to be long Kiwi against? What are you going to be long Aussie against? So let's take a look and see where we stack up. The only movement we've seen in cryptos is that Litecoin got a little bit better and Bitcoin Cash got a little bit worse. But other than that, they're just all sitting there doing nothing. The movements here, we've been looking at dollar yen saying, okay, that's where the play is right now, and it is no longer there. Dollar and yen have pretty much calmed down, and there's going to be some action outside of those pairs for a little bit. The European currencies, the Swiss franc and the euro have weakened, the pound has strengthened a bit, and what we've really seen is we've seen the Aussie and Kiwi run up to a +2. Looking at this, it's clear that the Aussie and Kiwi are moving, but it's not really clear that there's something strongly moving lower. And this is where it's not an ideal trading situation. We really like to identify the strongest and pit it against the weakest. Right now, the weakest currencies out there are probably the Swiss franc and the euro. So let's take a look at some of those crosses. I need to answer two questions. First, I have the Aussie and Kiwi that I both like long. Which one is the best? And then I have the euro and Swiss franc, both short. Which one do I like best? This is where, whenever you have this question, you simply just pair up the two. So let's take a look at Aussie Kiwi. This here is the Aussie Kiwi cross. Now, if this was going higher, you'd say, oh, the Aussie is stronger than the Kiwi, I want to buy the Aussie. If this would be going down, you would say, oh, the Aussie is weaker than the Kiwi, I want to buy the Kiwi. As you can see here, it doesn't matter. They're basically moving together. And so there is no relative strength and weakness between the two, so I think you can choose either one. Let's go and look at Euro Swiss franc. Same thing, which one is better? The question is, boy, they look pretty stable here. If anything, maybe there's a little bit of some weakness here with the EMA moving down, so maybe Euro is a little weaker than Swiss franc. Okay. That tells us right there, we need to look at pairing Euro Kiwi and Euro Aussie. Let's break down this chart. I've got a 1 hour chart here. And you can see that we have consolidated for a while in this low base. We have broken down, and we are now into this next area of support. We're seeing this little bit of a bounce here. Question is, where is our timing on this? We clearly want to be short. We clearly want to be short Euro Kiwi. The only question is timing. There's a decent setup here. We did get a breakdown below some levels. We're rallying up. We're hitting some resistance here. It is the Asian session, so these currency pairs aren't probably going to move much. But I do like this currency cross here. I like Euro Kiwi on the short side. The only question I have is timing, and I can't give you a great answer here on timing. Maybe if we get a red candle telling us, okay, we truly have hit our head against resistance here at 168.12. So I think, again, looking to be short somewhere around the 168 area, 167.90, somewhere in here, and then a stop above a parabolic SAR. I think that makes a lot of sense here on Euro Kiwi. Let's take a look at Euro Aussie while we're here, and just going to see that it's basically the same chart. we've got this breakdown, we got this low base. We don't know when this low base is going to break down. We don't know how long it's going to be in this area. So I think you just have to be waiting. If this is the currency cross you want to trade, I think you put alert out there at 152.75. And once that alert hits, you go take a look at it and say, okay, is this the entry I want? These are really the only two crosses here. I think we're going to get some better trading activity later in the week. This has been an okay week so far. It hasn't been great compared to what we've seen lately. These are really the only two currency crosses that I am even considering of the next 24 hours. To wrap this all up, I think this Ukraine news is going to keep the market a little bit muted. We've had some really good news lately. We've had CPI, PPI come out great. China COVID curbs being lifted is also great. Everything is more bullish than bearish right now. This little bit of attention here, it might keep this market down for another day or two. I still think this equity market goes higher. I just think that right now we are digesting a big move from last week and that we probably just need to chill out for a little bit. In the world of currencies, play what's moving. Right now, Aussie and Kiwi are moving, and I think they could continue to move higher based on the China COVID curbs being released. Focus on those, pair them against what you see as weak. There's not a lot out there. We identified Euro and Swiss franc as possibilities, but if things change, pair it up with something that looks relatively weak. That is the currency recap. Thanks for joining me. Goodbye.